How you doing, my dear friends? Oh, yes. It's fantastic. Coming at you live from beautiful Oak Lawn, Illinois. Been thinking about this the past couple days. Something's on my mind. Things in life happen and you think about stuff. Here's what's on my mind. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes, us people who are religious, this can particularly apply to religious leaders. Sometimes religious folks can get, I think a fair word would be nitpicky. We nitpick. Sometimes, not always, sometimes we can get nitpicky about some of the relatively small details of religious practice or theological matters. In other words, sometimes we concern ourselves with details that would just seem almost insignificant to anyone else, or we focus on turning matters that would appear to be really very minor into big major issues, making them way more significant than they're really supposed to be. This is something that Jesus talked about this. Jesus addressed this. He did. In fact, Jesus, some of you know this, but Jesus was actually very critical of the religious leaders of his own day. Jesus was. Yeah, especially, again, when it came to some of these minor details, these minor matters. In Matthew chapter 23, we have these passages of Scripture in which Jesus goes after the religious leaders of his. He goes after them. Here, I'll give you a little sample. This is Matthew chapter 23. This is verses 23 and 24. Jesus says, "Woe to you." This is the language. "Woe to you, teachers of the law, and you Pharisees, you hypocrites." This is what he says. Jesus is saying this. He says, "You give a tenth of your spices, mint, dill, and cumin." Spices, but you've neglected the more important matters of the law, justice and mercy. You've neglected faithfulness. He says, "You should have practiced the latter without neglecting the former." Verse 24, you blind guides, you strain out a gnat, tiny little bug, but you swallow a camel. Jesus was really good with word pictures. But you see what he's saying, right? He's saying you're dealing with these little details and you're completely missing the big picture. You're missing the big things. There's a lot that could be said about these passages of Scripture, obviously, but a simple takeaway, I like things simple. A very simple takeaway lesson is just this. Be careful not to let the minor details, the minor things, become something bigger than they're supposed to be. Bigger than they should be. I know that seems really, really obvious, but this is a mistake that we make a lot of times in life. You could put it like this. Put it like this. Jesus is saying, recognize what's really important. Like, make sure you recognize the main thing, and then keep the main thing the main thing. Now, if I say that, right away somebody goes, well, okay, well then what's the main thing? What is the... All right, the way Jesus answered that question, at least one of the key responses that Jesus would have given to that question is, you want the main thing? Here's the main thing. Love God, like really love Him, and love other people. That's the main Jesus called that the greatest commandment. Love God and love other people. Do that. There's a time and a place for details. We're not saying that details are completely invalid. I'm not saying that. I understand there's a place for it. But let's be careful not to be nitpicky. And I say this with great love. As a member of the church, I say this to the church. We can get a little nitpicky with each other sometimes. Let's not do that. Let's be gracious with each other. And remember, when we love God, really love Him, according to Jesus, and when we really love other people, then we're keeping the main thing the main thing.